At the very time that the Assyrians are asserting themselves and capturing and destroying the northern kingdom of Israel, the prophet Isaiah begins his prophecies in Jerusalem, the capital of Judea. And he writes in Isaiah 1:1, and we know what he's written because we found this scroll of Isaiah, the most complete of all the books of the Bible. We call it the Great Isaiah Scroll, and it was found at Qumran. And he writes in 1:1, the prophecy of Isaiah, son of Amos, who prophesies concerning Judea and Jerusalem in the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, the kings of Judea. Now you can go to the Israel Museum website. It is dss.collections.imj.org/Isaiah, and you can turn the scroll of Isaiah yourself. You can input passages and verses and see it in English, and soon it will be in Spanish. So was the name Isaiah a real name? Absolutely. Here's a seal that has Hizliyahu, son of Yeshayahu, Isaiah. Yahu refers to the Israelite God. And here is an inscription, Amos. And here is the reburial plaque of Uzziah, who was thought to be a leper. This is the Uzziah. And this is the seal, again, Yushna, the servant, that means the servant of a king, Ahaz. And finally, a ring that has the inscription Jotham. And the seal of Hezekiah, belonging to Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judea. There are so many wonderful passages in Isaiah, but one that is most well known, because Isaiah was the prophet of justice and peace, is Isaiah 2:4. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares. And here is a sword from that very period found in the Jericho Valley in the Israel Museum. And here is a Babylonian object, and it shows a plow. Because this is from the time of Esarhaddon a few years later, and what they did was, when they conquered a city to show they had destroyed it, they plowed it under. And Isaiah writes, he takes time to write an important passage about Shebna, who is the steward of the house, who appears prominently in Isaiah 36. But he says, why did Shebna create this fantastic tomb for himself? That was wrong, he writes. And here is the inscription of Shebna's tomb in the British Museum. Amazing. The Assyrians are now moving towards the southern kingdom, Judea, Jerusalem. Hezekiah knows about this, obviously. There's reason to fear them. They've already destroyed 20 years before Samaria. And so he knows how King David captured the city, which is to come up through the water supply. So what does he do? He reroutes the water supply of Jerusalem. He takes the outlet from the spring of Gihon. Every city was built upon a spring. No water, no city. So the Gihon spring, which you can see today, he reroutes the water where it went from. And here's the spring of Gihon. He creates a tunnel known as Hezekiah's Tunnel, and here it is. Here's the inscription that was found in the tunnel in 1880 by some boys swimming in it. It's now in Istanbul. And it was like building the Transcontinental Railroad in the United States. They started on the West Coast, they started in Missouri, they met at Provo, Utah, and they drove the Golden Spike. Well, here these two groups of men are chopping away with their hatchets and whatever it is, their axes, and they hurt each other. And the water began to flow from the spring, from the Gihon spring to the lower pool, as was written. And the lower pool was discovered just recently. And there it is, the Pool of Siloam, discovered about 10 years ago in the early part of this current century. Because they were working to fix a sewer that was underneath a road servicing the Arab households nearby. The Pool of Siloam is also the pool in which Jesus cured the blind man, and the place that the people went to take the ritual immersion, the mikveh, before going up to the Temple Mount. So Hezekiah has fortified the city, and we're told in the 2 Kings that Hezekiah sends an emissary to Sennacherib and said, I will pay you tribute. Don't attack Jerusalem. But we know in Isaiah 36:2 that in fact the king Sennacherib sent his representative to Jerusalem, Rabshakeh, who stood outside the walls and mocked the citizens of Jerusalem and says, you might as well surrender because we will capture you. He comes from Lachish. And here is Sennacherib sitting on his throne watching the Battle of Lachish and the spoils. And here is that inscription right here. This is on display in the British Museum. There's a whole room. This battle, for some reason, was so important to the Assyrians and Sennacherib, he carved a whole room of the story, showing the deportations, showing the ramps built to attack Lachish, which you can see today, those ramps, and the archers, and the slingmen. It's all there to be seen, all discovered. In the Bible, we are told that the Assyrians surround Jerusalem, but the angel of death came forth and slew 185,000 Assyrians, and they left. The Assyrians provide us with a different version of the events. This is Sennacherib's prism. There is one in Chicago, one in London, and one in Israel. And what he writes, as for Hezekiah, I made him a prisoner like a bird in a cage, and I took money and I left. We also have a confirming inscription by Sennacherib, and it was found between a tablet inscribed between the legs of this Lamatsu. There were many of these in the palace of Sennacherib. There's sort of a combination of a man and a winged bull, etc. And this is in the walls of the British Museum. As for Hezekiah the Jew, who had not submitted to my yoke, 46 of his strong cities, walled cities, I destroyed. The word name Jew enters history. Citizen of Judea. 694 BC. In Isaiah 37:37, we are told that Sennacherib left Jerusalem and went home. He broke camp. Here is Sennacherib's camp at Lachish. In 37:38, we are told that Sennacherib was worshiping in his temple, and his sons killed him, and he was succeeded by his other son, Esarhaddon. And we know this is a true story because the Babylonian chronicles record it. Esarhaddon, his son, ascended the throne in Assyria. On the 20th day of Tebet, Sennacherib was killed by his son in a rebellion. And here we have the stele the carved stone tablet, says Esarhaddon, the great king, the mighty king, king of the universe, king of Assyria. Now this is interesting because it's a juxtaposition where king of the universe, how can he be king of the universe if there's one God? There's a juxtaposition between the pagans and the monotheists. In roughly the same time period, written about the year 650, and Isaiah writes about the amulets that people are wearing. An amulet was discovered outside the walls of Jerusalem with the oldest biblical scripture. May Yahweh bless you, and may he keep you. May Yahweh make his face, his countenance to shine upon you. This is amazing. Not one, but two. They're on display at the Israel Museum. The oldest biblical scripture. The year 650 BC. Remember, this is the story of ethical monotheism. And we are told that in Exodus that if you take a neighbor's garment, you must return it to him before sunset. There is an ostrich at the very same time period as the amulet, the biblical scripture. There is a man, Hoshayahu, who is writing to the governor saying, and he, Shobi, he seized the garment of your servant, but he didn't return it.